Breaking confirmation. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo's management finally admits the truth everyone suspected. The moment the announcement hit the press, the entire entertainment industry fell into a stunned silence, the kind that does not arrive overnight but erupts like a long, simmering secret finally breaking through its restraints. And in that breathless pause, one question rose above all the speculation, the theories, and the carefully edited clips circulating online. What truth had Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo's management finally admitted, and why did it ignite such a catastrophic wave of disbelief across Asia, Europe, and virtually every major entertainment market around the world? The statement itself was deceptively brief, a mere handful of sentences released at dawn, but the weight it carried was immeasurable, because it did not attempt to deny, diminish, or redirect. It acknowledged, clearly and boldly, that the connection between the two stars was real, intentional, and far more significant than anyone had dared to articulate publicly. Hold on tight, C-drama family. The world of your favorite celebrities is unfolding before your eyes, and every moment is more breathtaking than the last. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. What followed in the minutes after its release was chaos of a magnitude rarely seen even in the celebrity world. Phones vibrated non-stop inside newsroom offices, reporters rushed to rewrite entire columns, television anchors scrambled to update scripts, and social media platforms experienced a surge so massive that several trending pages froze under the pressure. Fans around the world, who had spent weeks dissecting red carpet angles, backstage footage, and subtle exchanges between the two stars, suddenly found themselves holding proof that their instincts had been right all along. The truth, once merely a whisper drifting through the corridors of fashion shows and award ceremonies, had been confirmed in a way that could no longer be ignored. But the real story, the one that management did not include in the carefully controlled announcement, began hours before the release, in a dimly lit conference room where decisions made behind closed doors would eventually reshape the narrative of two of the most iconic figures in Asian entertainment. Representatives from both agencies sat across from one another, heavy folders spread across the table, each document containing fragments of a story the public had only seen through filtered glimpses. Tension thickened the air, not because of disagreement, but because everyone in the room understood that the decision to reveal the truth carried risks, consequences, and a kind of finality that could not be undone. Song Hye Kyo's manager had been the first to speak, her voice steady yet threaded with the weight of months of monitoring, filtering, and strategizing. She laid out the timeline of events, the Fashion Week debut, the unplanned backstage footage that had leaked, the whispering crowd that noticed the warmth in their shared glances, the private meeting in Busan that a fan caught on shaky camera, and the sudden rise in questions that were no longer harmless curiosity but direct, unavoidable inquiries. Lee Min-ho's management listened intently, exchanging glances that revealed their own fatigue from trying to maintain a barrier that fans, cameras, and insiders were already seeing through. The turning point came when a senior agency representative said, with a clarity that cut through the tension, that continuing to hide the truth would only intensify the frenzy. The world, he argued, had already formed its own conclusions, and those conclusions were now larger and louder than any official statement could contain. The only path forward was honesty, carefully framed, meticulously timed, but honesty nonetheless. While the agencies debated the phrasing of the announcement, Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo waited in separate locations, both informed but shielded from the technical details, their roles not in crafting the words but in preparing for their consequences. Min-ho sat in the quiet of his penthouse living room, city lights stretching endlessly beneath him, his phone placed face down on the table as though turning it over might summon every question he wasn't ready to answer. He was calm, but inside that calmness was a tension forged from years of carrying public expectation with grace. He knew what this confirmation meant, not just for his career, but for the fragile thread of privacy he valued deeply. Across the city, Song Hye Kyo sat near a window, her profile gently illuminated by morning light breaking through soft clouds. She held a warm cup of tea between her hands, grounding herself in its steady heat as her team finalized the release. She had weathered storms before, public scrutiny, speculation, false narratives, but this time felt different, not because of the public's reaction, but because the truth they were about to acknowledge was something she had chosen with sincerity rather than circumstance. It was not a scandal. It was not damage control. It was not a marketing strategy. It was a recognition of a connection that had grown quietly, steadily, and undeniably. When the announcement finally went live, everything shifted at once. Media outlets scrambled to interpret the statement, influencers recorded emotional reaction videos, and fans flooded comment sections with disbelief, joy, shock, and heartfelt messages that ranged from excitement to protective concern. The world wanted details, when their connection began, how it deepened, how long they had been hiding it, but those answers, for now, remained behind the curtain, protected by the same discretion that had kept them hidden in the first place. Yet even without specifics, the public sensed something profound, that for two stars whose lives had been shaped by fame, artistry, and relentless public scrutiny, this confirmation was not merely a headline. It was a quiet declaration of something personal, delicate, and real. And while the world dissected every pixel of footage, every line of the announcement, every rumor rising around their names, the two individuals at the center of the storm found themselves tethered not to the noise outside, but to a truth they had finally allowed to step into the light. The air inside the press hall shifted the moment their management stepped onto the stage, a slow, heavy change that rippled through the room like the first tremor of an incoming storm, because everyone gathered there, journalists, insiders, photographers, international correspondents, knew that what was about to be revealed had the power to reshape months of speculation, years of rumor, and decades of silence surrounding two of Asia's biggest stars. The murmur of voices that had filled the space moments earlier faded into a tense, fragile hush, as though the room itself was holding its breath, afraid that any sound might disrupt the truth the world had waited far too long to hear. The representatives stood behind the podium, composed yet visibly weighted by the gravity of the announcement they were about to make. Their eyes scanned the audience, meeting faces brimming with questions, suspicion, anticipation, and a hunger for clarity. The cameras focused tightly on every subtle movement, the tightening of a jaw, the slight tremble of a hand adjusting a microphone, the almost imperceptible inhale before the first words were spoken, because everyone knew that the slightest detail could hint at the truth behind one of the most talked about pairings in the entertainment industry. For months, fans had read between the lines of every photograph, every airport sighting, every interview, every accidental eye contact captured in slow-motion clips that flooded social media. They studied body language like scholars decoding ancient texts. They compared filming schedules, charity events, endorsement deals, fashion week appearances, and brand invitations, building theories so elaborate that even seasoned analysts found themselves pulled into speculation. Were Lee Min-ho and Hye Kyo collaborating? Were they simply sharing the same global spotlight? Or was there something deeper, something private, quiet, intentional, that the public had never been meant to see? When the lead representative finally spoke, the room leaned forward in perfect unison. Her voice was steady but carried the weight of withheld truth, the kind of truth that did not come from a script but from the pressure of countless sleepless nights spent deciding how much the world deserved to know. She began by acknowledging the speculation surrounding the two stars, the overwhelming interest in their recent public appearances, and the global response to their Fashion Week debut, an appearance that had become one of the most replayed red carpet moments of the year. She addressed the headlines that had circled the world in every language, the fan-made edits that went viral within minutes, the theories that had grown more elaborate with each silent glance between the actors. But then, just as the audience braced itself for a carefully crafted denial, the representative paused, straightened her papers, and made a decision that rippled across the room like lightning striking the surface of calm water. She revealed that what the world had been sensing, the quiet synchronicity between the two stars, the natural ease with which they shared space, the unmistakable warmth in their interactions, was not a coincidence, nor a marketing strategy, nor a temporary collaboration arranged by any brand. It was something far more genuine, something that had been growing quietly behind the scenes, far from cameras, far from speculation, far from the pressures of the industry. The cameras snapped explosively, their rapid-fire clicking filling the room as reporters surged forward, desperate to capture every nuance of the revelation. But the representative continued without hesitation, explaining that the two stars had chosen to keep their connection private for as long as possible, not out of secrecy, but out of respect, for their careers, for their families, for their own emotional clarity. They had not wanted their connection to become distorted by public interpretation before they themselves were ready to define it. As the words sank into the room, a wave of emotion washed over the entire audience. Some reporters stared wide-eyed, others exhaled in disbelief, and a few who had followed both stars' careers for years felt an unexpected swell of sentiment, as though something profoundly human had just unfolded before them. The world was not being fed another vague statement, another ambiguous explanation, another carefully timed misdirection. Instead, it was receiving honesty, raw, direct, undeniable.